AM Naik may have stepped down from his executive role at L&T, but his influence remains very much intact. His biography, The Nationalist, chronicles his struggles to make sure L&T remains fiercely independent. To discuss his dreams for L&T, the state of the economy which L&T mirrors, as also his biography, I am joined by the man himself, Mr. Naik.
Thank you.
Mr. Naik, welcome to ET Now.
Thank you very much.
In fact, coming to the state of the economy, I mean, there is suddenly a spate of good news. We see India making very good results in the ease of doing business. We see Moody's upgrading India's investment rating. You are a man who's got your ears to the ground. Have things changed so much?
I think it's good news, and things happens once the good news comes. That means Moody's improvement on rating will add to the confidence of the world in India. I suppose that will result in more capital investment and the general feeling of bullishness that I think we have arrived at the stage little better than before, and that will, I would say, to an extent will impact on positive influence of the economic development. But my thinking remains the same, my sentiment remains the same, that it will take time before this will impact the economic development of India, at least a year and a half.
So you expect the revival to happen only 1.5 to 2 years down the road? I mean, that's the timeline.
I would say 1.5 year.
Okay. But if I look at private investments, we don't see the story changing anywhere. Why is it that companies are so reluctant to invest?
No, I think it is more of a financial capabilities of various groups where they have over-invested or over-borrowed during the time of public-private partnership, which came as a kind of sunrise industry. Everyone thought there is a money to be made there. There was a guaranteed return of 12% post-tax, and lot of SOPs were given and people borrowed. Now, I don't want to get into how all the groups did get into stretching that limit of borrowing, and the industry did not do that well, public-private partnership. They could not repay the loan, and now they are in kind of lot of them in stressful situation. So for them to borrow anymore is not possible, even if they have an idea. And therefore it is going to be a while before the private sector will come back. There are 4 or 5 groups which has still the capacity to invest, but they have just gone through the cycle of major investment having been completed.
And so, sitting with idle capacities also in some ways.
Right. So therefore, I think private sector is not going to catch up for, I would say, 2 years.
And that is not good news for L&T, because we have seen the order inflow guidance being cut, and that is one reason why, right?
It's one of the reasons, but I think collectively the reason is also that the Middle East is not doing well with
Absolutely.
the oil price. L&T had 22% order booking from Middle East. That is now 10 to 12%. So we are impacted due to that. We are impacted due to no private sector investing. On the contrary, they have to come out of their current difficult situation they are in. And third, a lot of election after election coming in the country, which takes away a lot of social expenditure. And very little or not much is left off for the development of the nation. So I would say when you put all 3 reasons together, it is only L&T, or rather, I would say, rarely any other company in our space is doing well. L&T is still holding out and doing reasonably well. At least we have improved our profitability, we have reduced costs, we have improved our operational efficiency. Yes, order intake has somewhat tapered down, but we see a year and a half later, things reviving. Oil price is somewhat improving, so some investment will come back in the Middle East. And we are looking at new geography in Africa and Far East and so on, and trying to see if we can make up.
Mr. Naik, when we talk about slowdown, I mean, fingers are pointed towards 2 disruptions, note ban and GST, the glitches that we have seen, do you think the economy would have been far better off without those disruptions?
I think short-term disruption in any change, which is a major change in the economy, which can be impacted, is bound to happen. But is it good for India in long term? I have said before, I am saying again, that it could have been better implemented, little better, well thought out. But policy as such is good for India over a long term.
But the kind of rate tweakings that we are seeing happen.
GST.
About GST.
GST, I think, could have been much better thought out before implementing. Almost every month we have changed the rates, and that creates confusion in the market. Lot of deals have taken place at, let's say, 28% GST has come down to 18. What happens to recover the balance 10? So there had been strenuous conditions. But again, I continue to say that India needed one tax,
Absolutely.
not multiple taxes. Idea is good. It needs to improve its implementation.
When you talk about a recovery in the next 1.5 years, if I point to the Moody's assessment, they are talking about around 7.5% growth in the next financial year. Would you somewhat agree with the kind of growth projections that Moody's has come out with?
No, I would say it may be more like 6.5, 7, not 7.5. Unless you bring private sector back to health, which impacts at least 1.5% of the growth, which is almost missing, it's not going to be 7.5 so easily. And as I said, international scene being not so good in terms of investment or in terms of therefore securing orders. I'm talking about a project company, heavy industry company, and anything which is custom built, selling it
Absolutely.
to this thing. But otherwise, the US economy is doing very well. And there again, though the economy is doing very well, the disruption due to automation, due to big data, due to Internet of Things, due to analytics, have reduced the dependence on large manpower. And the manpower has been cut by almost 30%. And to that extent, the employment is impacted within India in last 2 years. And therefore, all the industry that supports the employment in IT industry has also suffered. So I don't see anything which is so shining in a way which can make up for all these irritants or all these somewhat not so happy situation.
As you rightly pointed out, job creation seems to be one of the biggest challenges for the government. I mean, why is it that the government has not been able to create the kind of numbers they had once promised? What are the immediate priorities that the government needs to stick to make sure there is productive employment generation?
That time also government had said that maximum job creation can happen through investment in infrastructure. And infrastructure is a backbone for all industries.
Absolutely.
Whether it is service industry, manufacturing, or the infrastructure itself. And that spending has not been taking off. Please understand that if any projects have come up, mega projects, that is all through international financing.
If I turn to another problem area, the state of the health of the public sector banks, I mean, the NPA remains a huge concern. The government has recently come up with recapitalization bonds for public sector banks. But do you think the insolvency and bankruptcy code that the government has come up with will help ease the situation, number one? And also there are many questions that are being raised about promoters of stressed companies being allowed to come back and bid for those assets at a steep discount. Do you agree to such a policy?
Well, last thing first, I don't agree. I don't agree that the promoters themselves, which has created the non-performance of the companies, one has to understand how they are going to perform better. Otherwise, it will appear as if the government has given them subsidy of several percentage of the cost. So I'm not necessarily feeling it's the right thing to do. As far as the insolvency code and so on, I personally feel that unless implemented properly and diligently, it may or may not create the effect that it should have. I think half the story, or more than half, is in effective implementation. The Prime Minister has come up with wonderful ideas, many of them.
But does he have a team to take it forward?
Well, that's a question mark. That's a question mark for so many of the initiative together. Yes, if you take 2 or 3 initiative, implement it thoroughly, and the effect of that is felt by everybody, I think, and then take next 2 or 3, would have done much better, because finally it is the implementation that reaches to the people.
Another, focus area for the government has been the Make in India campaign. We have seen that play out over a period of time, but many are questioning whether it is just a slogan, or are there signs that India is turning into a manufacturing hub?
I have a feeling that Make in India has not taken deep roots.
That's what many are questioning right now.
And if you see the import and export trade, there is more import than export. Continuously there is a balance of trade in favor of China. What you are exporting is really raw material, commodities, semi-finished product. What you are not much value add. What you are importing is all value added, with the result that the Indian Make in India program is not taking off to the extent it was thought to be.
Another comfort that India had was the low oil prices, and we have seen the cycle turn. Prices are actually inching up, and there is a feeling that it could go up further. While that is good news for your hydrocarbon business, which has been a bit muted of late, how do you see that play out for the country as a whole?
I think it will not impact well for the country. If there is one which was a shining point in the Indian economy, or rather economic development, is the lower oil price. Balance of payment and more than $45 billion of saving, all that help hopefully toward development and toward social sector. So that is slowly, I would say, reducing. To that extent, there will be even more strain in the economy for deficit of trade and also the fiscal deficit. And fiscal deficit is very important from the point of view of inflation, from the point of view of future of the country's health. So I think oil price have made a major impact. I hope it doesn't go up too much for country to not grow from its present level.
But there is also a campaign globally against fossil fuels. So do you think this state will continue for quite some time? The fact that oil prices will continue to go up for a bit, what is your assessment?
Well, if the economic development in the world catches momentum, because finally 6 trillion people and nearly 4 trillion or 5 trillion roughly are not still getting the benefit of the development of economy in the world. So there is a huge potential to grow. The question is resources, payback, the viabilities. But if all of that happens, then I don't think the demand for oil will come down to an extent that it will further depress. But I feel that $50 to $60 range is what possibly is long term it will settle down.
$50 to $60. And what does it mean for your hydrocarbon business?
Contrary to what you say, the oil price really impacted upstream, deep sea exploration and so on. While the investment in midstream, that is refining,
that was
petrochemical, actually went dramatically up because of the feedstock being cheaper. That is the input. There is the raw crude being much cheaper. And therefore, the oil processing and further downstream value-added product, the margins have gone up. So you can see almost all the midstream and downstream companies are making much more profit.
So that means more investment.
That means more investment. But investment is a lot happening in US where we don't work. But we have a chance to export our equipment, and we do.
What about the Middle East, which remains your critical market?
I don't think Middle East will see a very big upside because there is no consumption. It's all export. And what's happening is where they export, those countries are investing, which is not our focus to do projects. Yes, for export of equipment, yes. But as a turnkey project, not so much.
Under you, L&T has turned into a diversified giant. I mean, going forward, what should be the next bet for L&T? I mean, to take it to the next level. Some say defense has remained a startup for quite some time. Do you think that has the potential to redefining L&T?
You know, I mean, recently we have recognized defense as a future and accordingly reorganized the whole company. We have now, much ahead of time, 7 manufacturing plants for different things. We are not in the aircraft or for that matter aviation, so we have not invested in it. But Navy and Army, we have done huge investment. And the missiles and missile launchers and so on. And at the same time, we have set up number of R&D and engineering center to support this manufacturing. Not that the order have started pouring in, so some of the facilities are going somewhat idle, but I have a hope that in a year or two, which I hope I had for a long time, but it looks like real now, that the defense will take more indigenization and real make in India in defense. So L&T, I believe, is more ready for it than perhaps anyone else. And we have therefore carved out a division, which is a defense. And we have now appointed an executive director. First time in the history of L&T. That shows that we are proactive in what we see as an opportunity for future.
And now that there is a full-time defense minister, I am sure that will also help going forward. But
unfortunately, we had 10 years defense minister full-time and it didn't help much. So I think it is a lot to attitude of mind towards the policy of what you want to do.
But in terms of numbers, you see the 20,000 to 25,000 crore turnover orders from defense turning to a reality in the next 1 or 2 years?
I feel so, yes, in 2 years.
In 2 years you expect that to happen?
It may be even more than 20.
Because lately we are seeing some big orders coming in. Trans Harbour was a big one. The Shivaji statue.
Not defense.
Shivaji, no, I'm talking about L&T per se in terms of orders. Shivaji statue will turn out to be a big order. Navi Mumbai airport is in the offing. So you see the order cycle finally turning on its head?
These are mega projects. They have been in pipeline for a long time.
Very long time, yeah.
For your information, Trans Harbour Bridge was first penciled in 1970. So just planning stage has taken you 50
47 years, yeah.
In the meantime, China has built more than a dozen longer than these bridges. So I think we are very slow finally from what we thought or what we think and talk to put them into a real action. Whatever may be the problem, whether it is resources, whether it is something else, environment, but finally we are not able to implement the projects in time. We have gone wrong by years. I mean, we have been budgeting for Trans Harbour Bridge in our order book for 3 years. And finally, it's happening 3 years later. That too, with an international financing.
Mr. Naik, as Executive Chairman, you have been focusing a lot on the sale of non-core businesses. I know you have done quite a few deals, but one of the largest with Schneider, the electricals and automation business, that deal is waiting for some time. You expect the deal to finally close anytime soon? Because that's a huge stake for L&T which is there in this deal.
You are very right that it is under discussion and therefore I would not like to comment on it for now.
So coming to your biography, Mr. Naik, I mean, When did this idea strike you that you should pen down your thoughts as the chairman and as the CEO of the company? I mean, have you been writing your experiences all these years? How did this idea strike you?
Actually, I was so busy in my work that I never got an idea to write down anything.
Okay.
But for over 10 years, people have been suggesting to me from different walks of life that you should pen down your experience, what has happened to L&T over the last 53 years that I have been, what changes you have seen, ups and downs in the company, and so on. And the moment I started seeing that possibly now I have a time, last 1 year I have been sitting down with the writer, and of course he has interviewed multitude of other people, collected lot of material what the company had and others had, and the book has become a reality.
So congratulations for that. In fact, Mukesh Ambani calls you India's original Make in India man. Now, what's your personal equation with Mukesh Ambani like? Because you've worked very closely with him for a very long time.
Well, one thing is, you know, Reliance is the most entrepreneurial company, and all credit goes to Mukesh Bhai. I think he had done a wonderful job, par excellence as an entrepreneur. Why we could get along well is that I am a good implementer, I think, and a good professional. And I don't have conflict of interest to become an entrepreneur to take on any entrepreneur company. Second, we are in the space where no entrepreneur wants to be, by and large, because it's very difficult. Every order had to be negotiated and got, or you have to be L1. L1 means lowest in price if it is government.
Absolutely.
Lot of hard work for very little return.
But your personal equation with Mr. Ambani led to a win-win relationship between Larsen and Toubro in Reliance in many ways.
I would say I have never had conflict with Reliance as individual. Even if company to company there had been some conflict, I have only acted positively to make sure both companies really coexist well. It had done well for L&T because right from Patal Ganga 35 odd years ago till now, every project is implemented by L&T. And as Mukesh Bhai said, I mean, time is money, and Reliance knows it better than anyone else. So they don't do horse trading, and they don't do also too much time wastage in tendering and so on. So we came to cost plus formula from Dhirubhai's days, and because of which they save at least 1 year in project implementation.
But the biggest part of the story is about how L&T survived those takeover attempts, one by the Ambani's Reliance and one by Birla. I mean,
I can't tell you much about Ambani's because I became a director in '89.
Much later than that, yeah.
Much later. But I did act as a mediator to an extent that the conflicting situation don't emerge.
Because Anil Ambani called you to say that we are walking out of L&T finally, and we are selling our stake to Mr. Birla.
He did say that, but that is their prerogative, whether they want to keep that stake or give it to someone else. They thought it fit to sell it, and they sold it.
And how was it when Birlas expressed the interest to take over L&T? As the CEO,
well,
how did you react
at least,
to that?
You know, at least what he said first time, when he phoned me at 7 a.m. and I was in Chicago, Anil had phoned me at 1:30 at night. And he said,
the next morning he called.
He called and he said, you did not come to us, so we are coming to you. I had excellent relationship with Aditya Birla. He must have for years and years tried to, let's say, motivate me to join them. And I always said that while in L&T, I can serve you the best. My relation with you always is a good thought exchange, apart from being, you are our good customer. And this is really what was perhaps communicated to Kumar, and Kumar therefore started saying, you didn't come to us, so we are coming to you. Maybe it started as a good investment, and as I said, seemingly conflicting situation, I think ended a tremendous win-win for both the companies.
How do you balance personal and professional relationships?
When we are discussing about the issue of existence, it's a conflicting.
Yeah.
But we never lost cool any time. You know, because it was very clear in my mind that L&T should remain independent, but we should also not lose our relationship and our client.
Are you still hand-holding the management? What is your current role? That of a mentor, guide? How do you see yourself evolving in this role at L&T?
Mr. Subramaniam,
Is the
who
CEO.
I have been in touch for more than 10, 11 years when I spotted him. I have been mentoring him online, but very, very professionally and very systematically for last 4 or 5 years. I have continued to give him not only the great deal of responsibility, but added more to it in last 3 years. I had declared 3 years ago that my successor looks like Mr. Subramaniam. 3 years ago. And about 8-10 months ago, I decided, we as a board announced him as a successor from July 1. So this process of succession planning have been going on for a long time. And it has worked well. It had been the smoothest transition in the industry. So there is no question of interfering on day-to-day working of the company, which Subramaniam is so good that he does well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Naik. Thank you for speaking to ET Now.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.